Okay, so the first question, if you would like to tell me who you are.
Yeah, I am Roger, a person living in this physical manifestation. But I say that with the understanding that the experience of the manifestation is actually an experience arising in consciousness, and that the essence of Roger, or a very important aspect of Roger, which I'm defining as the person, the human being with a personality. So there's a very important aspect of Roger, the person with a personality, and that is the consciousness aspect of the person. Now, everyone has that, and yet it tends to be so free of color, because all the color is on the feelings and the personality. That aspect, the consciousness aspect, is underappreciated. So often we might know ourselves as a person, as a human being, but not appreciate, not be in contact with the consciousness aspect. And when that happens, we tend to be aware of the person, and that person we know ourselves as is changing, essentially. Those aspects that are more obvious tend to come and go. They tend to change throughout the day, the highs and lows. Whereas the consciousness aspect, if we find the ground of consciousness, we find that is a constant. It's something that we can come back to, and it's the same. And when we rest there, we can find ourselves outside of thinking, outside of the thinking mind, and by default, all suffering is on that level of the thinking mind. So we rest in our own being, in our own consciousness, and find that it is constant and at peace, free of suffering.
Thank you. The second question, you have of course touched a lot upon it, but I ask it and see if something else comes, or else, yeah, we leave it. But the question is then, what are you?
Once again, I would, I'm not sure of the subtle, maybe the first question was, who am I?
Yes.
So I would ask the what and the who. To me, it might be useful to differentiate that in certain teachings to highlight, let's say, the consciousness aspect. But where I'm answering the questions from, who and what would be the same thing. So I would say I am a human being, a person, and once again, a very important aspect of that person is the consciousness. That's where the sense of being and existence lies. So often, if that question is going to be answered from a different point of view, we would, a teaching might say, I am not the body, I am not the person. What I am is consciousness, because it's essentially pointing at the part of the human being that has been overlooked. And without that aspect of existence, or without that aspect of the human being, there wouldn't be a sense of I am, a sense of existence. And so we could, in a teaching, say that what I really am is the consciousness. Like if you lost an arm, lost a leg, your sense of beingness, your sense of aliveness, assuming that the thinking mind about the fact you lost an arm and a leg, assuming that doesn't come in and fill the space and make you feel a sense of despair or whatever. But if you were free of any thinking, you essentially are as alive, as existing as you were with an arm or with a leg. And so if we use that thought experiment, you we can start to realize, oh, my sense of existence is not, whether I have gray hair or dark hair or hair at all, or big muscles or small muscles, or, male or female. It is deeper than that. So I am going to answer the question that who I am and what I am is the person, and a very important aspect of the person is consciousness. Another important aspect, because we don't want to say, it's like saying, oh, a very important part of a car is the motor. And then we might, if we keep emphasizing that, we might then think nothing else in the car is important. But if you have a car with a motor, but then there is no gearbox, it's sort of pointless, right? The wheels don't turn. And so I'm not diminishing the presence of the physical and the emotional aspects of the human being. The working mind, thinking, intellect is an amazing quality that I value very much, and I value physical health when it's there. And it all fits together, all these components fit together to provide the human experience. What we're really looking for in life is peace of mind, meaning a life where we feel comfortable with ourselves and with the other. That is very much dependent on, for a while, losing focus on the more external aspects of the person and turning inward to find that unchanging presence. And then once we're established in that and have an accessibility to that, then we can start reintegrating the more changing aspects of the human being, the body, and find that our attachment to things remaining pleasure, 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 or perfect, 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 then falls away, because we appreciate that, on the outer level, change is the nature, but on the inner layer, the outer change doesn't mean a diminishment or an attack on that essence that I've been speaking about.
The third question is if you would like to say something about what another is to you.
You said what another, right, is?
Yes.
Well, life in practical terms, when we look at life on Earth, is essentially interhuman interactions. And so if life is interhuman interactions, interhuman relationship, then happiness in life means happiness is in interhuman relationship. Now, in order for there to be happiness in interhuman relationship, we have to ask ourselves what constitutes that. What is the unhappiness in interhuman relationship? And I think the answer is, it is the uncomfortableness that arises between ourself and the other. That is the unhappiness. So the other essentially becomes an object in our life that we can either be in harmony with or out of harmony with. And that's why it's very important to ask ourselves, what are we really looking for? And in this teaching, the answer is happiness, but it turns out that happiness in this life means happiness in the form of peace of mind. And peace of mind is the absence of guilt and blame and pride, worry and expectation. So when it comes to the other, it's blame towards the other is an attitude towards the other that is a form of unhappiness. Expectation of the other, how the other should act, and maybe worry. We worry about the other. So the happiness means, how do we end up with the absence of that relationship to the other? And in order for us to have this peace of mind in life, we need to be comfortable with ourselves. That's the trick. And so the comfortableness with oneself in the other really means peace of mind with the actions that happen through me in daily life, and peace of mind with the actions that happen through the other. Now, the actions that happen through me are not going to be perfect, and the actions that happen through the other are not going to be what deliver pleasure to me all the time. So the question is, can we have an attitude towards, meaning a way of interpreting or a way of relating to what happens through me in life, my behaviors, my reactions, my feelings, and an attitude or way of interpreting what happens through the other, knowing that what happens through me and what happens through the other is never going to be perfect and delivering me pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. And the trick really is, I think, to see that life is happening, that my behaviors and my choices are dictated by factors outside of my control. And so essentially life grows me into this entity that is feeling things, that is making choices. And so at any point in time, life has grown me into that person, shaped me, and I make choices and decisions and behave and react according to my particular structure, design at that moment. We might on the surface think, oh, I am in control of my feelings and my reactions and my behaviors, but a deep dive into this, in fact, you don't have to go very deep. You just need to appreciate that we are a biological instrument and we didn't sit down and design that biological instrument. Should give us at least the intellectual understanding that as we dwell on it over time, can go deeper and deeper till such point as we say, I simply cannot be the doer. And that is the same for the other. The other is also shaped by life, designed by life. And after a while, hope it doesn't take a long time to have the intellectual understanding. And the more that we dwell and contemplate on the intellectual understanding, we'll say, I simply cannot be the doer. Everything has happened through me. I've never really done anything of my own independent autonomy. I've never been separate from life. I've always been connected to and shaped by life. And the other is the same. They simply cannot be the doer. And that, when it is a total understanding, means that any feelings or thoughts of blame and hatred, resentment, are understood to be fruitless and in fact not founded on an understanding of how things work. But that doesn't mean that we won't be hurt by actions of the other, but we will understand that the attitude of blame and hatred that tends to extend horizontally in time for days and sometimes years or a whole lifetime just is a load of uncomfortableness that is not changing anything. And when we see this, we realize, oh, that is the unhappiness of the human being in this life. And that unhappiness is all attitudinal and not circumstantial. Is an attitude can dissolve, because once the system knows it makes no sense for that attitude to, the attitude is based on a misunderstanding of the mechanics. When the mechanics are seen to be impersonal, a personal hatred towards the other, a personal hatred towards myself simply no longer arises. And that is what I would say peace of mind in daily life is. So the other is essentially one of our teammates in this game. Everyone is playing their role, doing exactly what we're destined to do in each moment.
I love how you answer this set question in a way so that it still feels organical to to ask the last question, which you touched a lot upon also. And that is, if you please would tell me what life is.
Well, we know it is here. Where it came from is a speculation. There are lots of different theories. And actually knowing where it came from is something that might just satisfy the curiosity, or be something the thinking might want to have an answer to feel in control, or to feel like it knows something. But in practice, where it came from is irrelevant. The fact is that we are here, we are living. And so life in that, from that practical point of view, is what is happening right now in this moment. And when you look at it, we've never experienced anything than what is happening right now. If we have a memory of being 10 years old, the memory is of what was happening in the present moment at that point in time. And we spend so much of our thinking time in the past, regretting, and in the future, expecting. And if we start appreciating that life is what's happening right now, it's not a dress rehearsal. You know, you can't spend, well, you can spend 50 years waiting for everything to be perfect. And when you look at it, at some point you might go, hey, this is it. This is, it's happening. And so I better just start relating to it as if it's the real thing. And I think the pointers, wisdom pointers, these wisdom pointers say, you know, it is the uncomfortableness, the attitude that has become a sort of standard part of our momentary experience, this attitude of regret, of blame, of expectation, of thinking that my feeling of dissatisfaction is because of circumstance, and then trying to maneuver the future such that circumstance is perfect and saying, then I'll be happy. We might start to realize it's that thinking that contaminates the present moment, which I'm saying is all that life really is the present moment. And if we're lucky, we'll start to see that contamination that makes the present moment feel dissatisfying, feel uncomfortable, feel unfulfilling, discontenting. That can start, that it is possible for that component to start to dissolve. And when we experience life free of the uncomfortableness, it's actually very ordinary, very simple. And yet we say, well, that is the most significant contrast in the different life experiences. Life contaminated or filled with a cloud and air of uncomfortableness, or life free of that uncomfortableness. And if if there is a clarity, we might actually one day proclaim, actually all that I could have asked for really is a life free of that suffering. That's what is most precious.
Thank you so much, Roger.
You're very welcome, Eric. I think they're good questions that hopefully allowed some of the most important information I think is available in life to be delivered.